Emily Carter had already lost 11 years to prison, but nothing prepared her for the final betrayal, when Michael Harris, the husband who waited all that time, divorced her just 3 days after she walked free. Emily Carter and Michael Harris were the kind of couple people admired from afar. They met in college, where Emily's confidence and ambition drew Michael in instantly. She was driven, always chasing bigger goals, while Michael's steady and thoughtful nature balanced her out. When they married, friends and neighbors called them the perfect match, the kind of couple destined to build a life that others would envy. Emily rose quickly in her career at a local marketing firm, impressing colleagues with her energy and ideas. Michael became a respected teacher at the town's high school, beloved by his students for his patience and kindness. At community gatherings, their presence was always noticed. Emily had the kind of charm that lit up a room, while Michael's calm smile reassured everyone around him. They bought a modest home on a quiet suburban street, painted it bright white with red shutters, and seemed to embody the dreams so many others wanted. They had a daughter, Lily, who made the picture feel complete. To outsiders, their lives appeared free of hardship, a smooth balance of ambition and stability. Yet behind the closed doors of their carefully built world, strains began to show. Emily's hunger for success was relentless, and she often stayed late at work, chasing opportunities to climb higher. Michael, though supportive, longed for a simpler life, one rooted in routine and family moments. He rarely voiced his frustrations, preferring to stay quiet rather than start conflict. Their differences, once complementary, slowly began to clash in ways neither wanted to admit. While the town spoke of them as flawless, small cracks were forming beneath the surface. It was not obvious yet, but the seeds of future tragedy had already been planted in the lives of Emily Carter and Michael Harris. Emily's ambitions were not easily satisfied. She was constantly chasing promotions, recognition, and financial security that she felt Michael could never provide on a teacher's salary. It was during one of her late-night work events that she met Richard Cole, a businessman whose wealth and charisma caught her attention immediately. Richard was known in certain circles for his shady dealings, though on the surface he appeared successful and respectable. Emily was drawn to the energy he carried, the promise of something bigger than her modest suburban life. What started as casual business conversations soon turned into secret meetings that she kept hidden from Michael and everyone else in town. Richard offered Emily opportunities she had only dreamed of. He talked about partnerships, side ventures, and easy money that would open doors she thought were closed to her. Emily, eager to escape the quiet limitations of her life, allowed herself to be pulled into his schemes. At first, it seemed harmless, consulting, networking, and small risks that yielded impressive returns. But Richard's world was built on danger, and Emily became entangled before she realized the full weight of her decisions. One night, things went terribly wrong. Richard had arranged a meeting with a man who was threatening to expose one of his fraudulent deals. Emily, caught in the middle, was present when the confrontation escalated beyond control. A struggle broke out, and the man ended up dead. Panic consumed Emily as she realized she had been at the scene of something far darker than she had ever intended to be part of. Richard insisted they could cover it up, but the damage was done. Though she swore she had nothing to do with the man's death, evidence placed her dangerously close. In that moment, her carefully built image began to unravel. The trial became the talk of the entire town, a spectacle that pulled neighbors, reporters, and strangers into the courthouse to witness what they believed was the downfall of a once perfect woman. Emily Carter entered the courtroom in handcuffs, her once polished image now replaced with tired eyes and a pale face. The prosecution wasted no time in painting her as a manipulative woman who had lived a double life, presenting her connection with Richard Cole as evidence of greed and deception. They showed phone records, emails, and witness statements that suggested Emily had been deeply involved with Richard's business affairs and therefore complicit in the crime. Emily's family filled the benches, visibly shaken, refusing to accept the image the state presented. They argued she was ambitious but not malicious, determined but never dangerous. Michael Harris sat quietly behind the defense table, his head lowered, struggling between disbelief and sorrow. The media turned his silence into headlines, calling him the faithful husband, though no one could truly know what thoughts tore through his mind each day as he listened to accusations against his wife. Neighbors whispered in the halls of the courthouse, recalling how Emily had always seemed a little too polished, a little too hungry for more than the quiet life Michael wanted. To them, the scandal was both shocking and, in some ways, expected. The town's gossip only added weight to the growing public opinion that Emily was guilty. After weeks of testimony and tense proceedings, the jury delivered their verdict. Emily was found guilty of her involvement and sentenced to 11 years in prison. The sound of the gavel echoed like a final blow, sealing her fate. Yet, to everyone's surprise, Michael remained at her side, refusing to abandon the woman who had brought shame to their name. Prison life stripped Emily Carter of everything she once valued. The woman who had been admired for her confidence and ambition now found herself in a world of cold routines and harsh realities. The walls were gray, the cells cramped, and the atmosphere heavy with distrust. Emily quickly realized that her charm and intelligence carried little weight in a place where survival depended on toughness and silence. The other inmates viewed her with suspicion. Some mocked her polished background, calling her the fancy wife, while others kept their distance, sensing she didn't belong. Emily withdrew into herself, refusing to share her story, speaking only when necessary. The friendships she once built so easily were replaced by isolation, and the days stretched endlessly with monotony. Nights were the worst. She would lie awake listening to the sounds of anger, weeping, and the constant clatter of doors. The only moments of light came during visiting hours. Michael appeared faithfully, month after month, sitting across from her in the sterile room. He brought news of their daughter Lily, who was growing quickly in her absence. Emily tried to smile, but the pain of knowing she was missing years of her child's life weighed on her more heavily than the prison sentence itself. Guards often whispered about Michael's loyalty, calling it unusual, even unnatural, for someone to wait so patiently. Over time, prison left its mark on Emily's body and spirit. She grew thinner, her hair lost its shine, and her once sharp eyes dulled with exhaustion. Yet somewhere inside, a small ember of hope remained alive. The belief that one day she would walk free, return to her family, and rebuild what had been lost. What she did not know was how drastically life outside those prison walls was changing without her. While Emily struggled behind bars, Michael Harris faced battles of his own on the outside. Left alone to raise their daughter Lily, he carried a weight that seemed to grow heavier with every passing year. His days were filled with teaching at the local high school, a job that once gave him purpose but now felt like a burden. At night, he returned to an empty home where the silence pressed in on him, broken only by the sound of Lily's laughter or tears. He tried to shield her from the reality of her mother's absence, but the questions were constant, questions he had no real answers for. Financial troubles added to his stress. Without Emily's income, Michael struggled to keep up with bills, repairs, and the daily costs of raising a child. Friends and relatives offered help, but pride kept him from accepting much. They also offered advice, urging him to move on, to stop wasting years waiting for a woman who had brought scandal to his life. But Michael refused, clinging stubbornly to the promises he made when he stood beside Emily at their wedding. His loyalty became his identity, the only part of himself he could hold on to when everything else seemed unstable. Despite his outward devotion, Michael's private thoughts were less noble. Resentment brewed quietly in his heart, growing stronger with time. He replayed the choices Emily had made, the secret meetings with Richard Cole, the schemes, the lies, and each memory deepened his sense of betrayal. It wasn't only her imprisonment that pained him, but the destruction of the future they had once planned together. Still, he continued his visits, continued to play the role of the devoted husband. To the world, he was a symbol of patience and loyalty. But beneath the surface, anger and bitterness began to erode the foundation of his resolve. As the years passed, Emily Carter's case became more than just a memory. It turned into a story whispered in the town's streets, retold at family gatherings, and shared among students who barely remembered the scandal when it first broke. Her name carried a strange weight, half pity and half judgment. Some people said she was a victim who had been manipulated by Richard Cole, while others insisted she had known exactly what she was doing. Either way, the community never forgot the fall of the woman they once admired. Michael Harris, meanwhile, lived under the shadow of that story. Some admired him for his patience, calling him a model of devotion, a man who stood by his wife even after her disgrace. Others mocked him quietly, suggesting he was a fool for wasting his youth waiting for someone who had betrayed him. The whispers followed him everywhere, at the school where he taught, at the grocery store, even at church on Sundays. He never answered them, but each word cut deeper than he let anyone see. Richard Cole, the man tied to Emily's downfall, seemed to vanish from the surface of the earth. After her sentencing, he left the country under the guise of business. Rumors swirled about where he had gone. Some said Dubai, others whispered about South America. No one knew for certain, but his absence fed speculation. People wondered if Emily had taken the fall for him, if she had sacrificed her freedom to protect the man who had pulled her into his schemes. Michael never confirmed or denied those suspicions. When asked, he simply shook his head and walked away. Still, the doubt gnawed at him. Deep inside, he wondered if Emily's silence in court had been loyalty to him, or loyalty to Richard. That unanswered question lingered like a shadow over the years he spent waiting. The morning of Emily Carter's release arrived with a mix of anticipation and dread. 11 years had passed since the trial that shattered her life, and the world outside prison walls had moved on without her. She stepped through the gates carrying a small bag of belongings, her posture weary, her face lined with the toll of years spent in confinement. The woman who once turned heads at community events now appeared fragile, older than her age, her confidence replaced by a quiet uncertainty. Waiting just beyond the fence stood Michael Harris, holding a modest bouquet of flowers. His expression was unreadable, neither joy nor anger, but something distant, almost mechanical. Emily's heart lifted at the sight of him, a flicker of hope igniting within her chest. For all the nights she had cried alone in her cell, she had clung to the image of this moment. Michael standing there, proof that she still had someone waiting. She believed this reunion meant a second chance, a chance to rebuild the life that had been ripped apart. Reporters lingered nearby, cameras ready to capture the moment. To them, it was the perfect image, the faithful husband welcoming home the fallen wife. The scene played into the legend of Michael's devotion, and the photographs were quickly shared across news outlets. Strangers praised his loyalty, writing messages about true love enduring through hardship. Emily walked toward him, her hands trembling, and accepted the flowers. She noticed his eyes avoided hers, but she pushed aside the unease. After years of separation, she told herself, it was natural for things to feel awkward at first. As they drove home in silence, Emily imagined reuniting with her daughter, sitting together as a family again, and proving to the world that she could still find redemption. In the days following her release, Emily Carter tried to adjust to the rhythm of freedom. The familiar streets of the town felt foreign, changed by years she had missed. Neighbors glanced at her with curiosity, some offering polite nods, others turning away. Inside the house she once called home, everything felt both recognizable and unfamiliar. Her daughter Lily was no longer a child but a young woman, her manner distant, shaped by years of growing up without her mother. Emily longed to bridge the gap, but every attempt felt clumsy, as though she were intruding into a life that had learned to function without her. Michael Harris remained by her side, but his presence was heavy with silence. He didn't smile the way she remembered, nor did he offer the comfort she had once leaned on. At meals, he kept his eyes on his plate. At night, he slept with his back turned. Emily told herself it was the result of time apart, that their bond simply needed patience to heal. Yet the distance between them grew sharper each day, an invisible wall she could not climb. What Emily did not realize was that Michael carried a secret knowledge. While she was in prison, word had reached him of her illness, a quiet battle she had endured without telling him. The surgery she underwent, a mastectomy forced by medical necessity, had left her body forever changed. Emily had hidden it out of fear, terrified that even his loyalty might not survive the truth. Michael, however, already knew, and instead of drawing him closer, the knowledge repelled him. He saw not the woman he had waited for, but someone he no longer recognized. To him, the person he had held on to for 11 long years had disappeared, leaving behind only a shadow. 3 days after Emily's return, Michael Harris made the decision that stunned everyone who knew their story. Without warning, he filed for divorce. The man who had built a reputation for his unwavering loyalty, who had endured 11 years of solitude and gossip, suddenly walked away when his wife was finally free. Friends, neighbors, and even colleagues couldn't make sense of it. For over a decade, Michael had been the symbol of devotion, yet his patience ended not during the trial, not during the long years of prison, but in the quiet aftermath of her release. When word spread, the town reacted with disbelief. Some accused Michael of cruelty, saying that no one should abandon a woman who had already suffered so much. Others whispered that perhaps he had been waiting only for the attention, that his loyalty had been more performance than love. Whatever the opinion, one fact silenced them all. Michael admitted he could not accept Emily as she was. He told close friends that the surgery she endured in prison had changed her too much, that the woman he waited for no longer existed in the way he had imagined. Emily was devastated. Humiliation layered over heartbreak as she realized the man she had trusted to stand by her was the one to betray her most deeply. The flowers he held at the prison gates had been nothing more than a mask for a decision already forming in his mind. In her heart, she understood that her illness, her scars, had become the reason he abandoned her. For Emily, it was a cruel irony. She had survived prison, scandal, and public shame, only to be destroyed by the rejection of the one person she had believed would never leave. The end of Emily Carter's story carried a twist no one expected. After Michael Harris filed for divorce, investigators reviewing old case files uncovered letters Emily had written during her time in prison. They were never sent, hidden away in storage boxes marked for evidence, but their contents revealed truths that shifted how people viewed her. In the letters, Emily described in painful detail her secret arrangement with Richard Cole. She admitted that she had chosen silence during her trial, deliberately shouldering blame for actions she had not fully committed. Her reasoning was startling. She believed that protecting Richard was the only way to keep Michael and their daughter Lily safe. Richard had threatened her, warning that if she spoke against him, her family would suffer. The discovery painted Emily not as the cold, calculating woman the jury believed, but as someone who had made a devastating sacrifice. She had traded her freedom for the hope that Michael and Lily would live untouched by Richard's reach. When the letters became known, public opinion shifted. The same community that once condemned her began to see her as a tragic figure, a woman broken by fear and loyalty. Michael's reputation, however, took a sharp fall. The man once praised as the model husband was now seen as shallow, abandoning Emily not because of her crime, but because of the scars she carried. The divorce papers became a symbol of his betrayal, a stain on the years of devotion he had carefully displayed. He was left alone, stripped of admiration and weighed down by judgment. Emily, though shattered, was remembered differently. To some, she remained guilty. To others, she became a woman who paid the highest price for love. In the end, the line between villain and victim blurred, leaving a story that would haunt the town forever.